Okay, I got the memo about our obscure pop culture references, and I'm wondering why I got Pink Lady and Jeff.
That's weird. I should have gotten Pink Lady and Jeff. That's
Sure.
so strange.
Welcome back to this week's Car-Pinionated, our weekly show about cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61 in Hartford, and with me is Glenn Packman from Fairfield County, noted comedian and car enthusiast, and Jeff Buchholz from WBBM in Chicago, and he is also a car enthusiast, and that's why we sit and we talk to you fine folks. Gentlemen, Jaguar has made some noise recently, and I don't know if they wanted to make noise the way they did, but somebody's paying attention to them now. And to clarify, we're taping this before they show any of their new themes or concepts or anything. So we're going to talk a little bit about the controversy, and then next week we'll have more on what we think about it. Jaguar, as we know, decided that they weren't going to sell any more cars for a while, which is an interesting tack for a car company to make. And so they stopped and they're getting rid of their old inventory. And they've decided to go in a new direction, and it's been unclear what their new direction is. And what, 2 weeks ago, they came out with a video that was going to talk about their new direction, and it includes a new logo, and it includes what looked like a fashion shoot with a lot of European model type people in very flowy, brightly colored clothes, and some smoke, I think, some walking down hallways, paintbrushes, all the things that you would expect in a European fashion model shoot, and not a single car, not a car to be seen. So, a lot of people had a lot of problems with this because if the internet is worth nothing, it's worth outrage or concern or whatever. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Uh,
I'd heard the first piece that they were ceasing operations and selling off stock. I didn't realize that there was a perfume commercial video out there for because that's what it sounds like. I'm gonna have to dig this up because now I'm really intrigued. Um, the first thing that popped into my mind is what is this going to do to their stock? Because to come out with such an announcement, I don't know if that's good for the financial stability of any company, especially if they're giving a very nebulous, like, okay, we're going to move into something new. That said, I can't help but be curious. I guess it all comes down to how good their new line or what they're proposing is to the world. Yeah, companies can reimagine themselves, and they either do a good job or a bad one. Uh, I'm a little skeptical. I don't think Jaguar is enough of a player in the world market to really just stop and restart. They do have their niche followers, and we don't see a lot of them here in the U.S. Obviously, it's still a niche brand. But I can't help but be curious if they're working on something really, really, really cool, or the converse of that, are they working on something that they think is really cool? And without anything tangible, it's hard to say. Um, I don't think it would sit well with American car makers to do something like this. But I guess with a small enough brand, maybe it'll work. Maybe. So that's a very nebulous answer on a nebulous thing that they've put forth. I'm not helping. I am not helping at all.
I think you may have a clearer idea than most people.
Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
could, and I'm just saying it could be something really. Let's see them shake things up. I would love that. And a car maker like Jaguar that's had a heyday. I mean, there's so many classic Jags out there, and the name has cachet, obviously. So they could definitely ride on that. So maybe they're ripe to do this. I don't want to be too skeptical and say, oh, bad Jaguar, don't do that. I do think they're ripe for a refresh of some kind or another.
Yeah.
But to cease and then restart is risky in my book.
Yeah. Jeff, what are you thinking?
Well, Jaguar had to do something.
Right.
Let's consider for a second how much the business of luxury automobiles has changed in the last 20 or 30 years. Jag has been known for being these great kind of grand touring cars and sedans. You think about the E-Type, which of course is, widely considered to be one of the most beautiful cars ever made. The old XJ sedan, the XJS two-door with the great honking V12 engine, great if you needed to get from London to Cannes for dinner, that kind of thing. And the sort of later, the XJ40s, the X300s, an XJR of that vintage would be my last car if I was to be told you can buy another car, but it's the last car you will ever own. It would be that in British racing green with biscuit hides. Gorgeous cars, real wood, great leather, giant engines, athletic handling. That's what Jaguar always offers, or has always offered. But then a funny thing happened over the last 25 or 30 years, and it's a couple of things. First of all, it's the rise of the luxury sport utility vehicle, which means that for companies like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, who are larger and have deeper pockets, they can easily, create platforms for SUVs and sell a bunch of them. The problem with Jaguar as it's presently configured is that Jaguar shares a corporate owner with the company that literally wrote the book on luxury SUVs, which is Land Rover. And you look at the whole range of Land Rover products, from the Discovery to the various and sundry Range Rovers, the Evoque, the Velar, the Range Rover Sport, Cool Ranch, not so cheesy, you know where I'm getting at, like this whole series of Land Rover branded, and the Defender, of course, which is fantastic. They've pretty much got the waterfront covered. And then the other thing that's happened to luxury automobiles is that the definition of luxury in the modern sense is very different than it was 25 years ago.
Mhm.
If you you look at one of those like great older Jaguars, or a Mercedes-Benz of the period, or any number of luxury cars one could name. A Rolls-Royce comes to mind. Great, real wood, and, carpets you could lose your keys in, that kind of thing. What has happened in this sort of tech bro driven luxury car universe now is that luxury is big screens with lots of information. And I mean, you look at the dashboard of the current S-Class Mercedes-Benz, and there's screens all over the place. And,
Right.
the constellation of your choice lit up in the headliner on your rolls or something like that. And it has left Jag, I think, a little betwixt and between. Like, it's not as luxurious as your sort of ultra luxury marques. Aston Martin's another good example. And it winds up sort of occupying the same strata as like Maserati and Alfa, and it would very much like to be Porsche, but Porsche also has really deep pockets thanks to its association with Volkswagen. So it had to do something. The sort of being lost in the marketplace, decades of terrible quality control are all kind of catching up with it. So it had to push reset. So I don't know that it's a big deal for Jag to say, we're not going to build cars for about a year. Besides, Land Rover's got the waterfront covered, and they'll be fine. Jaguar Land Rover, a division of Tata Group of India, is going to be fine. The ad campaign reaction has been really interesting. The video that you mentioned, Glenn described it as a perfume ad. I saw it as being sort of a reboot of the United Colors of Benetton. And for the record, I was a big Benetton fan in the year. And the new logo and everything else, it's clear that they are speaking to a different audience. For the last 30 or 40 years, Jaguars, however many syllables you think the name has, have really been bought by the same 2,000 or 3,000 cis white people around the world. And that's not really a growing business at all. So what you do if you want to speak to a different audience is you have to create something that will break through and will get people's attention. Oh my gosh, this is completely different. And Jaguar has done that. They have de-emphasized the leaper, which has been a trademark of the brand for decades. They have gone to this very new typeface for the logo type. You have a very different sort of public face of the brand, or faces of the brand. A lot of the criticism of which feels, I'm not going to say racist necessarily, or sort of anti-other, but it sure feels like a larger cultural commentary than I might expect from a car ad. And it to show, Doug pointed out that the internet does outrage really well. It's sort of the extreme of that is that at some point, I think it was the Daily Mail, I can't remember, some British magazine or newspaper evidently sussed out the name of the person who may have been the creative director for this campaign, and talked about him being with his partner, his husband, and their home and everything else. And the guy has been absolutely flamed on LinkedIn and other social media campaigns, which we cannot stress enough is a bad, bad, bad idea. And everyone who did that should be absolutely ashamed of themselves, because ultimately it's a car ad.
Right,
It's
exactly.
about a motor
Yeah.
vehicle. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't
Right.
matter, really. Will the car be good? Gosh, I sure hope so, because Jaguars have always been really interesting. And at the moment that we're recording this, the one teaser ad, the one teaser image that we have is kind of interesting, if a little sort of new age 49 Tucker, which I'm not completely against, by the way. Apparently it's going to be electric, but again, as of this moment, we're not sure. So do I think it'll sell Jaguars? I have no idea, and none of us do. Do I think it has helped reset the expectation for the brand? Yeah, I do. And what it says is that Jag intends to sell to different people, different, younger, more sort of nouveau riche people than have been their stock in trade in the last few years. And that's probably the way to go.
Right. I think they've gone from the traditional English, style person with the estate and everything, and they want to hit influencers. They want to be part of the conversation.
Exactly.
And they've really become part of the conversation. And, maybe it falls under the category of no publicity is bad publicity, but okay.
I think if you're Jaguar, there is no such thing as bad publicity.
Right. I mean,
you have to do something. They had to do something other than cater to the same generic Bond villains they've been selling to for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, I had a little bit of a novice question here, and I'm just wondering, do you think that maybe their end goal is to have more of a dent in the Indian market, where they're technically their home base is? I mean, just as a sidebar, we Americans tend to forget that the country with the largest population in the world is now India. I mean, I think we write off a lot of Indian products and ideas and stuff from India as being not, forgive me, in our minds, and this is all American stuff, and forgive me for saying this, but not first world. And you can't be the largest country in the world and not be first world. Okay. There's a
Yeah,
huge market there, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm
it
wondering.
is possible, and there are aspects of this campaign that feel very Diwali-esque, I'll be honest. You know, the dye and the bright colors and the whole deal. It does feel very sort of pan-Asian. I will say that most of India is incredibly inhospitable to cars. Roads are ridiculous. Traffic is crazy. And Tata's already a pretty big player with its own branded vehicles in the Indian market. Now, is it interested in getting more sort of local directors? Yeah, probably. When I saw this, the thing that occurred to me was the Middle East. I saw this as being a big play for what is referred to in the industry as MENA, which is Middle East and North Africa. You know, whatever this new Jag is, could I see this driving down Sheikh Zayed Road in Dubai? I think that's what they're after, because those people have money.
Right. And I would add to that, extending all the way to Southeast Asia. Because there's a lot of money too, and
Singapore, Hong Kong,
right, exactly. And so I think that I think that all that could be part of this idea, but we tend in a very, monochromatic way to just think about England and America, to our detriment sometimes, many times. The other thing I heard of in the discussion was that maybe what they want to do is go sell less cars, but for more money.
Yes.
The Celestiques of the world being $300,000 make a lot more money than, the XT4, which they're not going to make anymore, but for Cadillac. But that's sort of like this premium product at a premium price, that goes to people who like the showy part of it. And and they have to do something, because I think that probably there's more Jaguar Waymos than any other.
That's true. Yeah. The I-Pace.
Exactly. And so, just something has to happen. Something has to happen.
That's a good point, because the way that Rolls-Royce and Bentley have sort of distinguished themselves in this present marketplace as being sufficiently sort of elevated from the current Teslaization of luxury cars is the level of customization you can get. I mean, literally the world is your oyster when you buy a Bentley or a Rolls, whatever color you want, whatever interior finish you want. That's where the money is. The money is in, you want elephant hides for your seats? No problem, sir. That's an extra 70,000 pounds. Okay. I think that's where what you're going to see out of this new Jag experience is a higher level of customization. I mean, that's what Cadillac is offering with the Celestiq, as you point out. That's where the ultra luxury market is going. I think that's where Jag thinks it's going. And as famously or infamously, the number of billionaires in America or in the world goes up, that's where, who was it who was asked, why do you rob banks? And their response was, because that's where the money is. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
And that's an area of the market that Land Rover, Range Rover doesn't really cover.
Right. Go ahead, Glenn.
If I may, my most recent Jaguar experience, it goes back to 2019, literally right before the pandemic. We took a trip to California, drove to Las Vegas, and then back up to Bakersfield. So there was a hefty amount of time in the car, and very much to our pleasure, we were upgraded to a Jaguar XF, which is their, it's smaller sized 4-door. I will say this: it's a very pretty car. The design of it on the outside had beautiful lines. But the driving experience, at that point in time, we were still regularly driving our Chrysler 200, and the car is about the same size.
Really?
And it was very reminiscent of each other. Now, that's a compliment for the 200, but I think it's sort of ratcheting down the Jaguar a little bit. It didn't feel luxe. Both of us, driving this thing, it was a nice car. It just didn't scream luxury in any way, shape, or form, or exciting, or, much of anything. The best part of it was that it just looked really sharp. But it wasn't really enough for either of us.
Well,
we were thankful to have it for the week.
Yeah.
But I stepped away from it just thinking, I don't know if I would pay the money for this,
Yeah. And that's, I think, been part of their problems. They tried to, starting under Ford, they started to dilute the brand with the smaller models and try to be more things to more people.
Yeah.
Kind of like, okay, well, Mercedes and BMW do this, so why can't we? But they never had that built-in market. And then, comes along and then everything disappears for them, and no one really feels like they need a Jaguar. Now they're stuck with a full range of products and trying to make an SUV that isn't a Range Rover. And so it became all these market forces. And then, I feel like they kind of had shot themselves in the foot by not updating any of those.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And as you point out, first under Ford, Jag has struggled with how to expand the brand for years. They saw how well BMW was doing with the 3 Series and Mercedes with the C-Class sedans, and we're like, oh, we can do that. We have this Ford Mondeo that we can upholster in leather and give all-wheel drive. And very few people, at least on the other side of the pond, were fooled by that. The S-Type wasn't a terrible car at all. Although its development and the platform was really good, it was amortized by sale of the Lincoln LS, which was the same car, and the Ford Thunderbird, which also was the same car, the new retro style T-Bird. Again, not a bad car, dull, not bad. My only Jag experience was driving an S-Type, actually, in London. A few years after they came out, I had rented one on a trip. After 30 seconds to get used to shifting with my left hand, it was a perfectly acceptable, in fact, really nice drive out to Stonehenge and then up to the Lotus factory up in Norwich, actually. They have really struggled with that market, and it seems to me that their response is to forget about that market. Land Rover, Range Rover have the sort of lower to middle end of the market covered with SUVs, which is kind of where the action is right now anyway. So they must think, you know what, let's just head all the way up market and put ourselves in a position where, maybe we don't have to sell more than 1,500 or 2,000 cars, and we can make them really special.
Glenn, you were saying some final thoughts.
Just a little bit of ancient history here. When I was in my it would have been between 8 and 14 years old. We lived in Glastonbury and Connecticut, for those in the know, outside of Hartford. Our neighbor right up the street, the only other kid in the neighborhood my age was Kyle, and Kyle and I kind of grew up together. His mom and stepdad lived 2 doors up. The stepdad owned the Jaguar dealership in Hartford. In fact, the only one in the immediate area, and their car, they always had a Jaguar in their garage, always. And just when we speak about Jaguar, that's where my mind goes back to. Now, this would have been the late 70s, I guess, ish. Yeah. Would
the
have
British, as we call it,
early
the British
late
Leyland years.
70s.
Right. The Series 3 Jag, which is very handsome.
I mean, there was a flavor there that we've lost over time, and I think it's just the change in the markets. We're not keen on sedans anymore, and that has damaged, I think, Jaguar just as badly. you know, if not worse than any other brand. But I do kind of miss those days. And when we started talking about Jaguar, I just remember being driven everywhere by Mrs. Pilati and the latest new Jag,
Fly and
you know,
pull.
and it was always an exciting experience. And boy, I wish I could get that back. And I know I'm talking like 50 years ago at this point, but it's fresh in my adult mind. So yeah, why not?
Pilati and Pool had a whole bunch of British Leyland cars that they sold.
They sure did. Yeah, they
Including my
also
father's
covered,
Austin Marino, one of his lesser choices.
Wait,
right.
did they invent Pilates?
Same pronunciation, believe it or not, different spelling. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
all right. We're gonna call it a night for this. Thanks, guys. It's always fun. You can find us on YouTube, whole list of Car-Pinionated episodes if you'd like to take a look. You can get in touch with us if you have any comments or leave it in the YouTube page below. And we will see you next week.